Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 87th episode of Together for Education, a webinar series brought to you by Notebook. I am Meghna Laha, AVP at Notebook, and your host for this evening. Back in April 2020, when the lockdown had just started and schools had shut down, Notebook started this initiative to connect the community of educators on a thought-sharing platform that might be of help to them as they got more used to online classes. About a year later, Together for Education has had a fantastic journey. Topics ranging from curricular to extracurricular, from sports to mental health, from NEP to alumni have been discussed. Week after week, the love and support you have shown to this platform has been its engine of growth, and we sincerely thank you for that. Today is a very special session. Unlike the usual Wednesday Saturday schedules, today's session is the 2nd of April, the World Autism Awareness Day. Notebook has always supported the cause of inclusivity in education. Inclusivity in terms of learning abilities, engagement levels, socioeconomic strata, and mediums of instruction. Thus, today, we use the Together for Education platform to explore if our education system is ready to include children on the autism spectrum and how we can be of greater help to these children. Our first speaker today is Mr. Achin Bhattacharyya. Achin is the founder and CEO at Notebook. A chartered accountant by training, Achin was a director at Deloitte prior to starting Notebook. He has worked in India and abroad in various senior capacities in GE, PwC, KPMG, and Deloitte. He is a fellow of the ICAI and a member of CPA Australia. He is also the recipient of the prestigious Indian Achievers Award 2020 for excellence in digital education and outstanding contribution in nation building. Achin is an avid reader and a passionate traveler with keen interests in economics, history, literature, and philosophy. He is a regular speaker at various forums and chambers of commerce and also contributes articles to numerous publications regularly. He is also on the board of some of the most renowned corporates and contributes significantly to their brand strategies. Over to you, Achin. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Meghna, am I audible?
Yes, very much, very much.
I once again welcome all of you to today's topic, the importance of which needs no elaboration. Autism spectrum disorder, ASD, refers to a range of conditions characterized by some degree of impaired social behavior in terms of communication and language, in terms of narrowing down of interest activities that are both unique to an individual, and very often we have seen that ASD begins in childhood and tend to persist into adolescence and adulthood. Most of these cases are apparent and diagnosed during first 5 years of life. And very often we have also seen that individuals with ASD often being present with other co-occurring conditions. Say, for example, instances like depression, anxiety, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. Now, the levels of intellectual functioning in individual with ASDs is extremely variable, and it's a broad range extending from profound impairment to superior levels. Now, it is important that during early childhood, optimal development and well-being of children with ASD in terms of monitoring their development as a part of routine child health care, etc., at least early detention, and also it's not a single condition, it's actually a spectrum of disorders. Now, when you say a spectrum, it ranges, for instance, from someone who is non-verbal, who can't speak, who communicates by using an iPad, to touch pictures to communicate his or her thoughts and concerns, to a little boy who, when he gets upset, at times will start rocking, and eventually, when he's disturbed enough, may even hurt himself by banging his head. So it's a very wide spectrum. Now, the same diagnosis of autism, though, at times we've also seen that a child, for example, who is actually remarkably gifted in a subject like mathematics, who can actually do tremendous amount of mental maths. Say, for instance, multiplying three numbers by three numbers in his head with ease, which other children might find difficult. Yet, when it comes to having a conversation, he may face difficulty. He may not make eye contact. He may face difficulty in some terms of starting a conversation, may feel awkward, may get nervous, and may actually shut down. Now, as we discussed, that this huge range of disorder. So when we see a child who is finding it difficult to communicate, to speak, do we find someone who is incredibly talented, very, very good in a particular subject, maybe doing great, but might find it difficult to communicate. So I remember very recently watching a very, very interesting documentary, a very informative documentary in this regard. The name of it was In Our World. It is a documentary by award-winning filmmaker Sridhar BS, which was in fact premiered in an international film festival that happened in Goa in 2018. And the film very uniquely highlights ASD through the lives of three children. It's a short documentary of around less than an hour, I guess. But it really makes an attempt to unpack the world of autistic children. And not only the children, but their entire surroundings, like, for instance, their families. And it really brings about a more nuanced understanding of ASD. Interviews of parents, therapists, day-to-day activities, and not only education, but in terms of, swimming classes, say, music lessons, and special moments that they spend spending with parents. I also remember another very, very important movie in this regard, which really helped in terms of raising awareness on this particular topic. And I'm sure many in our esteemed audience will recollect Dustin Hoffman's portrayal of Raymond Babbitt in the movie. The name of the movie was Rain Man. It's quite an old movie, I think late 1980s. Starring opposite Tom Cruise. And this was a performance that really kicked off the search for authenticity in depicting characters with ASD. Hoffman won the Academy Award for Best Actor, film won Oscars for Best Picture, and a lot of other awards like Best Writing, Director, etc. But what really caught my attention is to reach that level of accuracy, both Hoffman and the screenplay author spent time with the man that the movie was based on, real life autistic savant Kim Peek. Now, many of Babbitt's apparently extraordinary skills were actually genuine talents that Peek exhibited. Hoffman also mimicked Peek's somehow unusual gait and a number of his mannerisms in order to provide an accurate portrayal of the character. This film really helped in terms of humanizing people with ASD, and its critical success, commercial success, paved the way for many further work in this particular area. Another real-life legend based on whose life a great movie has been made. In fact, I was watching one of her TED Talks as well. Temple Grandin. In this biopic, Clara Dance brings authenticity and accuracy to her portrayal of real-life doctor Temple Grandin, who is a noted professor of animal science, I think in Colorado University, who helped revolutionized practices in human handling of livestock on cattle ranches and in slaughterhouses. Now, what is really inspiring is that Grandin beat the odds to both become a respected professional in her field and a respected autism rights advocate. In a TED talk, I saw she very nicely, and I remember one of her quotes, which really explains a lot. She said that without children, without people with autism, the human race would still be sitting in front of a cave and trying to light fire with the help of two stones. And when when she was asked during her TED talk that why does she say so, she went on to explain, and very beautifully explained. She said, people who have really contributed to the planet in an immense contribution as visual thinkers, in terms of design, photography, as pattern thinkers, in terms of, architects of Silicon Valley, people who have really conceptualized these tech giants, many of them in software engineers. And she also goes on to explain a third category called word minds, where she explains about authors, very eminent journalists, etc. And she goes on to say that considering the wide range that we discuss here, many of these incredibly talented people who have contributed immensely to the face of the planet fell within this range. Another very important quote by her, and I think again goes on to explain a lot. She said that kids have to be exposed to different things in order to develop. And she explains it very beautifully when she says, a child is not going to find out that he likes to play a particular musical instrument if you never expose him to it. So exposure is very important. So when it comes to a quote, another one-liner which really is my all-time favorite is a quote by Kerry Magro, award-winning speaker and best-selling author. And the quote is just one line, but a great quote. When he says, autism can't define me, I define autism. Now, one of the things that really concerns us is, and whenever I discuss with, in many cases I've heard this, that is the trend. Are more and more children being diagnosed these days? Is it because of increasing level of awareness, or is there any other challenge? There's another very strange, and I believe this has always existed since times immemorial. But with increasing level of awareness, definitely more and more of these instances are being detected, and definitely there's a lot more support available in hand. A lot, but wherever we are, still I can say there's a long way to go. There are a lot of other challenges that needs to be solved, when all stakeholders of the society need to take responsibility and come forward. And the next question, I was again seeing this, a very silly misconception. And there are a lot of articles around this. A lot of articles, a lot of misconception, that do vaccines cause autism, which is completely nonsense. So earlier there was a research paper which was published in a scientific journal a decade back, and post that there have been a lot of write-ups in this particular regard. But it has been proved, and this particular article was ultimately taken off this particular journal called Lancet. And the author, who was a physician, his medical license was revoked, was taken away. So again, we come back to the same question, that then what causes it? So just that, there's no single answer. Just that, again, when we discuss about autism, as we said, it's a spectrum. Similarly, there's a spectrum of etiologies as well, a spectrum of causes. Based on data, we know that one of the causes or one of the associations, I'll say, that has come again and again is advanced paternal age, increasing age of fathers. In addition, are different reasons like being like during pregnancy, mother's exposure or the fetal brain's exposure to some drugs, particularly to a medicine called valproic acid that has been proved again and again as one of the principal causes. But again, as we discussed, that there's a huge range of causes. But again, that's one side of the story. Coming to challenges that people face, and especially we need to come to terms with the fact that we are discussing about autistic children, but they grow up to be adults. And at times, it might be difficult for them to find regular employment. But undoubtedly, there's increased level of awareness. And I was seeing that a lot more employers are now open and receptive to hiring adults with ASD. But some significant challenges that we see, and again, these are published data. Globally, it says globally, fewer than half of autistic adults are employed. So less than 50% are employed. And even within that less than 50%, many are in part-time jobs, or many of them are underemployed. They are doing jobs for which they are overqualified. And in many cases, in order to get a job, people with autism need to compete for positions which can be difficult for those with social, with communication skills, which at times becomes a little bit of a challenge. Otherwise, these individuals may be very successful or talented in their own domain. Again, we have seen that challenges like, for instance, social anxiety, sensory challenges, uh, at times, uh, lack of acceptance, which again leads to a different kind of challenge. But considering this, there's no doubt about it that the level of awareness has definitely increased. And I was reading some very encouraging data. Many large corporations have begun to see a lot of value in terms of hiring people with autism. For instance, I'll quote 3 instances. I was reading about global consulting firm Ernst & Young, and they have a proper formal neurodiversity program that reaches out to autistic adults who have skills in subjects like mathematics. Other companies, for instance, if I name major global players, companies like SAP and Ford, again, have similar policies, similar hiring policies. So these are very encouraging trends, I must say, in terms of employers being far more receptive. Because again, I'll say there's a lot of untapped talent. And the way I look at it, it's mutually beneficial, because these adults, these people, they may bring in a different kind of skill. They may bring in a different kind of talent to the room. To end with, I'll refer to autism advocate Rachel Barcelona's a very interesting quote, very famous quote. And she very nicely sums it up when she says, "Everyone has a mountain to climb, and autism has not been my mountain. It has been my opportunity for victory." So I think these are a few things that I wanted to share with all of you. I thank all of you for giving me a patient hearing. Today we have a very eminent panel, and I really look forward to hear from them with regard to their perspective in this very important issue. I thank all of you again. Over to you, Meghna.
Thank you, Achin. Thank you for those wonderful thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get on with the panel discussion, a little bit about Notebook. Notebook started in 2018 and has emerged as a leader in the online education space, offering short videos tailored to the school curriculum. Both teachers and students find these videos to be extremely helpful. Teachers can use the videos as part of their class. A short 6-minute video introduction to any topic always helps raise curiosity levels among students. Months later, when a student needs to revise the topic or prepare for an exam, they have access to the same videos on their personal devices, laptops, smartphones, or any preferred device. We are going to play a short showcase of Notebook's videos for you now.
नमस्ते बच्चों, नोटबुक में आपका स्वागत है। इस नए वीडियो को आपके सामने प्रस्तुत करते हुए हमें बेहद खुशी हो रही है। हमारा उद्देश्य है परंपरागत शिक्षा को आधुनिक तरीके से पेश करना, ताकि हमारी ये नई पीढ़ी या आप सभी कहीं भी कभी भी इसे आसानी से पढ़ सकें।
Hello students, today we are going to study the story Madam Rides the Bus, written by Valli.
The king, Louis XVI, had come to power in 1774 at only 20 years of age. The king helped the 13 American colonies gain independence from Britain.
Curly brown hair turning permanently black. If you memorize this line, it will help you remember the ratios all your life. How? Let's see. Some people have is a way of remembering sine is equal to perpendicular by hypotenuse. Provides energy for everything you do throughout the day. Next is the nucleus, the brain of the cell. This is where all the secrets are stored. Why do you think you have black eyes as your parents? Aha! Thank the nucleus.
Whoa! What is this? We are gonna drown.
Don't worry, you're not going to drown. This is the cytoplasm.
Sometimes, a fully grown individual, such as Hydra or Planaria or starfish, can give rise to a complete individual from its body parts. Isn't this interesting?
नोटबुक में आप सभी का पुनः स्वागत है।
Ladies and gentlemen, such wonderfully illustrated videos and about 10,000 more are available on www.notebook.school for your use. Without further ado, let us now start the panel discussion you have all been waiting for. Let me first introduce to you the first moderator today. The moderator today, Rashmi Shetty. Rashmi has over 2 decades of experience in communication across PR and branding. She has worked with brands like Marriott Kathmandu, Airtel, Tata's, Diebold, Nixdorf, Siemens, Gulf Air, Bajaj Alliance, ICPCI, Bureau Veritas, MoneyGram, Chumbak, GE, Emphasis, UNICEF, besides others. She holds a master's in business administration and lives in Mumbai. Beside her passion for public relations, Rashmi pursues art, music, writing, and works closely on various social projects. She is currently co-founder of Storyteller 101 PR. Rashmi, really glad to have you here, and I shall let you take over from here for the panel discussion. Thank you.
Rashmi, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the wonderful words, Achin, because what you said is really what autism is all about. It's really a spectrum. It's not something that you can put in one particular bracket or one particular basket and say, this is autism. And clearly autism doesn't define a person. A person is who he or she is. And of course there are challenges, and that's what we're all here collectively. We have, 60, 70 odd people who've come to hear us speak on this. That shows an interest to understand this world of autism. And of course, we have an eminent panel with us, which will give you a complete idea of what the spectrum is. What are the opportunities that lie in there? Because clearly autism is just a different ability. It's not a disability. And once we get that thing in our mind, we can discuss further, we can raise awareness, and we can see how we as a society can truly be inclusive. On our panel today, we have Dr. Sujata Noronha. Doctor, can you just put on your video? Hi, doctor. How are you?
Good evening, Rashmi.
Good evening. She is on the panel and she would give us the perspective from the medical side of it. We also have a parent, Christina Prabhakar was. Christina, if you could just on your video and your microphone.
Yeah.
Please.
Hi, Rashmi.
Hi. Hi. And Christina will give us the entire idea from a parent's point of view and her perspective. And we have Vahbiz Mistry, who is the core member of the Forum for Autism and also a very proud mother to a young adult on the autism spectrum. So welcome all of you.
Hey, Rashmi. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedules and coming. I will just run through a few quick introductions that we have for our panelists. So as I said, if the other two panelists can just be off, we'll just have Dr. Sujata right now, and we'll then come on to Christina and then Vahbiz. So Dr. Sujata is a certified neonatal and pediatric physical therapist with over 2 decades of experience. She is certified in neurodevelopment therapy, sensory integration, Brazelton newborn behavior observation, and Prechet's general movement assessment. She is also trained in family and infant neurodevelopment education from the UK, and she's currently working in a level 3 NICU and is the director of Kidstreat Pediatric Development Center. Dr. Sujata is committed to helping the infants have a better quality of life through a holistic approach in early intervention. So, doctor, the first thing that we really want to ask you is, because we've heard what Achin had to say about autism, and then you have a lot of movies around that. Of course, you have parents who are very emotional and passionate and involved in their own way of understanding the spectrum. Of course, it is a spectrum. But what would you say is the clinical definition for autism?
If you look at the clinical definition of autism, then it is characterized as a development disorder, okay, which is shown...
Can you be a little loud? We can't hear you too clearly.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, better.
Yeah. So it is characterized by development disorder, wherein this persistently characterized by social communication issues, with interaction issues, and they have repetitive or restrictive behavior. That is how we define this. If I put it in a layman's term phrase to explain it to parents, if I say, if your child does not give you eye contact, is not responding to his or her needs, he is not interacting with you, or not having a proper relationship with you and through communication with your child, if he is very persistent or rigid in his behavior, these are some of the signs that I tell parents you need to watch for and then get it evaluated from a developmental pediatrician to identify the child's potential to be on the spectrum.
Okay, so what you're saying is that clinically it's a neurodevelopment disorder, but if you have to, as a layman, figure out, you will see certain things like eye contact, like a lack of communication, which could hint you towards autism. So which brings us to the next question, right? It is a spectrum. So if you could throw a little more light on what does it really mean? Because we've heard of conditions like people have diabetes, then they have diabetes, that's it. If you have a heart condition, you have that. But if you have autism, you're on a spectrum. What does that mean?
So see, autism can occur individually or it can occur with other developmental disorders like probably seizures or some other symptoms, or even probably a developmental delay. Since some children of with cerebral palsy may also do kinds of autism. See, when you talk about autism itself in each child will show you differently. See, each one child with autism will show you the same symptoms like another child with autism. Each child is different. Their symptoms may vary. The way they show you each day varies. So that's why some may have very mild symptoms wherein they have the social anxiety, but they may be okay otherwise. Some may show you symptoms like where we have proper social anxiety, communication issues, and they may also have cognitive issues. That's why it's expected because it varies. The range is high, and it depends on the child where their child lies at a particular time.
So it's really different. I mean, they could come with different conditions, or they could just have autism and they could, be as different as the other person. So no two autistic people are the same. But that again is how normal people are, right? None of us are the same as the other person. So of course, there are these differences, but if you have to look at the similarities, what do you think, as a medical professional, do you feel are the similarities between an autistic person and a neurotypical person out there? What do you think are the similarities?
I would say, if you ask me personally, I never compare one child. As a parent, you couldn't compare between two kids, right? Or neurotypical. So if you say a so-called neurotypical child, they have certain hobbies which they pursue. They might like art, they might like music, they might like sports. A child on the spectrum who has a particular interest in a particular thing will also pursue that. So if a neurotypical child can pursue a hobby, and if a neurodiverse child is showing an interest in a particular thing.
Sorry, doctor, your voice just went off in between. Yes.
So if a neurotypical child is showing it as a hobby, a neurodiverse child is showing it as an area of interest, which is very sophisticated. So
correct.
You cannot compare the two. There are certain similarities, there are certain differences.
Correct. So clearly, I think there's some voice disturbance, so people can't hear. They've been just messaging that they can't hear you too clearly. But what she just said is that you just cannot compare anybody, forget whether it is on the spectrum or off the spectrum. You're just as unique as you are. So you've got to figure out your strengths and work towards it more than focusing on, what is not there or what can't be helped with. So that clearly, doctor, shows that, the children on the spectrum can have different levels of skills, can be different in understanding things. Do you think that they are actually ready for school? Are they, or let me put it differently, are they ready to gain knowledge?
Yes, depending on their cognitive level and the support system that is available to them. I emphasize on the support system because some kids do well cognitively, but if they have social issues, these schools where they're going to learn, capable of handling issues. Do they have the resources to help? Because children on the spectrum, yes, they are capable to learn. You have to teach them the way they can.
So clearly what you're saying is that they can gain knowledge. You'll have to teach them the way that they understand, and the support system is very important. And you've worked in the UK and you've worked here in India. Do you find any difference in how society perceives autism and how they perceive these children in terms of just general basic awareness? Is there enough awareness in India?
I think India, the awareness is being generated now compared to probably what you would have seen a decade back. Now there are people who are more aware of things. I have seen parents walk into the center on their own with their concerns, saying, I feel that my child is showing me. And so, I was surprised when parents walk in on their own and they're not just referred by a doctor. So that shows that there is awareness. Yes, if you talk about awareness as an inclusion, we still have a long way to go.
Correct. But there is growing awareness, there's growing acceptance of it. And as a medical professional, what have you seen over the years? Over the years, have you seen that if these children get the right kind of support, they get the support not just by professionals, but with parents and society, have you seen a marked improvement in what they can do?
Yes, definitely. Especially the earlier that the child comes to the diagnosis and intervention, we have seen a marked difference in their appearance of the children. I'm not saying that the autism is goes away, the diagnosis goes away, but the way they can handle the challenges is much better.
So clearly early intervention. Early intervention is what you're saying. Okay.
And also if you look at it from the perspective of being included in the society, if you look at schooling, yes, I think there are a lot of schools that are coming up with the resources now to help the kids.
So yes, so you're saying that this is growing, and the fact that schools are also adapting to all this is what we hope to see in future becomes a more inclusive society where we understand how these children learn. Like what the team at Notebook was saying, you have video content now and you have content in different formats. So if we figure out that, there is a possibility. And as a medical practitioner, you clearly feel that early intervention, good support, and awareness as a society is what will help these children.
Yes. Not just for the parents of the kids on the spectrum or just the teachers who are handling them, but the entire society. So even creating an awareness on the children in the class, the other teachers in the class, if they are also aware and are taught on how to, incorporate them, like handle them, be with them, then I think that's where the inclusion is.
So you're saying it starts at education, but even at education level, it has to be more inclusive, where you're including every stakeholder who's associated with that autistic individual. Great. Thank you so much. That was so enlightening, because as a medical profession, we need to understand that as parents and as people who are caregivers, people tend to get emotional. But factually putting out there, you're saying early intervention definitely helps, a good support system helps, and figure out a way to teach them in a way that they understand. So then they can definitely be more contributory towards society. Great. Thank you so much, Doctor. And we move on to Christina now, because we've heard the medical standpoint of how things are. So Christina, if you could just on your video.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. So Christina, just to give a brief background about her, has earned her MBA from ECU, Australia, and has worked in the technology sales field for 8 years within India and UK. She's a mother to 2 beautiful children, and one of them is on the autism spectrum. After a few unsuccessful attempts at traditional schooling, she's currently homeschooling her son and uses a mix of technology and books to teach conceptually. She lives in Mumbai with her family. Thank you, Christina, for taking out time and joining us today.
Thanks, Rashmi. It's really a pleasure to be here and talk about my favorite subject.
True. So like the doctor said, right, it's all about early intervention. It's all about having that support system. It's all about awareness. If we have to get into your journey, not just as a parent, but also as an advocate of autism, as an autism advocate out there, what do you think are the key highlights of your journey with your son?
Okay, so before I start what my journey with my son is, I was sort of aware of autism because of my previous work in a summer camp. But my journey with Sean's diagnosis began when he was around 3 years of age. So we noticed that his speech had regressed. And to cut a very long story short, he started at school that June. But very soon it became very apparent the school was not very welcoming of him. Ma'am, he's sitting there staring off into space. He's not answering my questions and things like that. So it became very apparent that they didn't want him there. So we did withdraw him and we put him back in a play school for some more time. He started coming out of his shell. And then began our journey to find the right school for him. It was a tough, you go back, knocking on doors everywhere, trying to find someone who will understand. I had Dr. Sujata come with me to one of our principals to talk to them about, we had to educate the principal about, yes, he's able to learn. So, please open your doors. But we've been to a few schools, some claiming to be inclusive, some that call themselves international schools. I have to be very honest and say that the teachers on the ground do try to some degree, but the policies in place by the management do greatly suffer. I mean, they say you're inclusive, but you have to be very, very honest and say, by saying that we're giving you a level playing field by letting a child on the spectrum sit in the same class as neurotypicals, that's not inclusiveness. Inclusiveness is giving them tricks and avenues to learn how they learn it. For example, I asked, could I please have the question paper on a tablet form? My son will answer it in a multiple MCQ type of an answer format. And it was refused. If I have to give it to you, I have to give it to others. That's not the point. The point was my son was having physical difficulties in holding a pencil. Not to say that he didn't understand the concept, but it is the actual giving of options to the children is not in place. So you could have a banner saying that we are an inclusive international setup, but really it has to come down when it comes down to the nitty-gritty. Do you allow your child? Do you allow the child to learn as they can? People say, school is a way of socialization. I disagree to some degree, because all the teachers tell them to do is go sit in your place. I'm going to teach you this lesson now. There was one teacher that was very kind enough to let Sean pace at the end of the class as he was listening. So he did answer her, but he had to be allowed to pace. So this is the thing, you have some teachers do try their best, but policies are not exactly as they should be.
So what you feel is that, yes, like we've discussed before, there is a capacity of a child, of an individual on the spectrum to gain knowledge. What we need to do is find policies that will help them out better in the education system.
Yes.
There are well-meaning teachers, like you said, about the teacher allowing him to just pace around and still listen. who get the idea, but we need to have more policies in place.
More policies, yeah.
And do
and
you
also
feel that
training,
this...
yeah.
Sure. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, and also training. I mean, I'm not talking about one chapter in a textbook when you're doing teachers training, or one day seminar on autism or learning disability. I'm talking about understanding this. The more and more you look at it, more and more kids are going to be showing signs of some of the other. Life is not what it was 30 years ago. So you have to understand these kids are exposed to a lot many things. So you have to be very aware. The teachers have to look at it and say, you know what, this is how I can teach this child, and this is how I can adapt it slightly and teach this child. Because if you're talking about a level playing field, that is what it should be. It should be being able to give accessibility, and that is true inclusion.
And that's a very, very good point, that what is true inclusion. And this is something that, we've spoken about. The journey in autism really starts first from awareness, then acceptance, and then inclusion. So when you move to step 3 directly, that just doesn't make sense. No. You have to understand what this entire spectrum is all about. You have to make yourself knowledgeable about it, and then comes in inclusion. So you're right, it's all about the level playing field across, whether it is a small child starting off at a nursery level, or somebody who's really going to pass out from school and go off to college. Do you think that technology really helps these children, or do you feel it's a hindrance?
Absolutely, it does. In our case, when we started homeschooling him, I do understand that Sean responds better to audio visual. Okay, so he couldn't speak very well, but when he was watching certain things, he would pick up the way the word is enunciated, how it is pronounced. He would pick that up, and eventually he would pick up dialogues. So those dialogues would become his script. So when I would ask him a question, he would use that from his memory bank and answer it into script. Well, that's how usually language develops. I'm talking about language development, not just speech. Language development in any child. You hear your parents talking, and that's how it is. So in this case, cartoons helped a little bit. Some other apps helped a little bit. Today, when I'm homeschooling him, there are some challenges, as in certain concepts I cannot make him understand. But I have found these obscure videos on YouTube, or some weird way of teaching him using household items that has clicked. So technology plays a massive role in any disability, because think about it. If you use technology like closed captioning, alternative text, and there's this amazing thing that is coming out now called Avatar Adventure, which was just debuted today, basically where children can learn, because the kids on the spectrum do connect to technology very quickly. They understand technology because it's very predictable, it is very set, and they can control it. It is in their control, which is excellent for them to feel, being able to be in control when everything in the world is so uncontrollable. Or you can't stand right, you can't walk right, you fall too much. But here is something that I can control within very easily. So they do connect to it very easily. And there are these technologies which can help them learn and talk about those who have whose speech hasn't developed. I mean, there are things that you can do with technology which becomes very hard in a day-to-day atmosphere for a teacher to get out of them. Tablet format. I think I forget what it is technically called. I don't know. They use pictures. Yeah. They use pictures instead of forming specs. Specs board. Yes. So yes, absolutely. I believe technology has a massive role in helping our kids. Yeah.
So do you feel that if technology is introduced in schools, and like you rightly said, our NEP says that you have to have a minimum percentage of children who are differently abled in a classroom, but that doesn't serve a purpose unless you figure out how to differently teach them.
Yes.
So if technology is a part of it, you do feel that that is actually something which will help out children and make it more inclusive.
Absolutely, yeah. Simple thing like answering a questions, at a test. It helps. Yeah.
So it's not about knowledge. It's about how they translate knowledge and how we can be more receptive to it, because clearly these are people, we've known of children on the autism spectrum having massive IQs, and we've known of them, not being able to, and that leads to a lot of frustration at their end too. So we as society, if we are mindful of that and understand, like I said at the beginning, it's a different ability. It's not a disability.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you figure that out, that is something. And as a parent who also, has her own groups and is talking to other parents, have you seen any change in how things were perceived years ago and how they are now?
Yes, to some degree, yes. I think, but with each family, it is going to be a very, the story starts all over again. So, for example, when you have initial diagnosis, you will find, a lot of confusion, a lot of questions, a lot of focus on why, क्यों हुआ ये, कैसे हुआ.
Yeah.
So let's, as a parent who's been through that journey, let me just say the why doesn't matter. The why doesn't matter. Let's not spend time wasting our time figuring out the why, when you should really be thinking about how can I help this parent, or how can I help this child, how can I be in his life and help him. So I would say that as you begin your journey in the autism world of autism, you become your child's advocate, and therefore it is your responsibility, and it's better for your child when you start communicating more about autism. So as families have gone about talking about autism to their neighbors, to their families, to the society in general, people do tend to then open up. It's not like वो पागल बच्चा जो है वो floor पे रहता है. It's not like that. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be honest.
Yep.
That's how
Yes.
it's. People don't
Yes.
understand these things. So yes, there is a change, but we have to change it ourselves. We have to begin with ourselves. We started at home. We started with our family. We started with our neighbors, and then if they understand, then your child is in a very a safe circle. Then you can go and progress. As your child grows up, as you talk more about it, it will increase. And I think there has been a change, yes, but there's lots more to be done to
Right.
achieve. Yeah.
So where you clearly see that if acceptance begins at home,
Yes.
that's when it can begin at a societal level, and you
Yes,
have
absolutely.
more of that. Do you think there's more support now in terms of professionals for people on the autism spectrum? Do you think it's more available? Because there are still parts of India where it's not easily available. We of course live in the metros and are highly
Yeah.
privileged, but even if you're looking at metros, do you think it is readily available where people are there to help?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it is, but I don't know about the quality of it. You know what, Rashmi? It's very important to understand. Even as medical professionals, some of them do lack the full knowledge. So there are a lot of work has to be done. There are therapists who go to work in hospitals, and they will tell you that the pediatricians are not aware, or they're not as aware of neonatal issues, or things that could be identified. Sujata could tell more, but the early interventions can be picked up if the doctors pick up these things. So there's a lot to be done in terms of the medical professionals continuously improving their own knowledge, being open to be told. Doctors in India have a problem about listening to the fact that they don't know it. So that's another thing. If they are more open to learning, and which helps early interventions, early detection, early interventions, quick therapies, the child can progress so much more further with early interventions. So there's a lot of work that has to be done. And also I think just one of the things I had a problem with initially was the doctor not being honest with us, about not telling us what exactly is an issue. So they must not treat the parent as an idiot, but rather explain to them the reality of what it is, that it's a long haul. I think parents will go through the grief and come up again, and then realize, now this is a life, we will do it. I mean, yes, that is a different topic, the parents, but if you give them a realistic and a positive picture of what people with autism can achieve, parents will hop onto that without the feeling of so much doom and gloom. But I'll tell you just as a quick example, the first doctor told me, the first therapist who met Sean told us he has an inner ear issue. I spent 2 months researching online what inner ear issue could affect his speech. That was not clear communication on her part. Sorry, that is,
Right.
that's really bad. But the next therapist was able to give me a clear picture. Look, this is autism spectrum disorder. This is what we need to do. This is how it helps. And here's the plan forward. That helps. So she didn't treat us like an idiot. She treated us like parents. We are very much, part and parcel of that journey. So we need to be informed. Now we can begin the real process. So that is one thing very important, Rashmi.
Right.
Yes,
So
help is available,
yes.
but quality help, I don't know
Quality
about
help
it.
is something that we're still looking at. So thank you
Yes.
so much, Christina.
Thank you.
There's so
Yeah.
many valuable inputs as a parent. And we'll move on to Vahbiz, because we'd like to know more of what the organization is doing. So Vahbiz today, who's with us, is actually a co-founder and a member of the FFA, of the Forum for Autism, which is out there. And she's a parent of an adult on the ASD spectrum, whose constant endeavors towards awareness and early intervention have helped individuals in their growth and all-round learning. Vahbiz is a core group member of the Forum for Autism, a platform which aims to improve facilities for diagnosis, education, training, rehabilitation of people under the autism spectrum. So Vahbiz, thank you so much for taking out time today to speak to us. And like you've heard, Vahbiz, from Dr. Sujata Noronha about the fact that there is a growing amount of awareness, early intervention helps. From Christina, you have found out that how it's really more helpful if people are pretty honest about what the diagnosis is and what one can do with it. And it's clearly not a disability, but a different ability. So if you can shed on some light on your journey as, of course, a parent, but also as a core member of the FFA, because a Forum for Autism is doing a lot of good work. So if you can just throw some light, yes, on your personal journey, but also on the journey as a member of FFA, please.
Thank you, Rashmi. Actually, my son was detected with autism at the age of 15 months. And after that, we started therapies. But we did have a round of rejections at the playgroup and nurseries. But I was lucky enough to get a school where he was welcomed and I was allowed to sit in the classroom, which is very rare these days. But I was allowed to sit there which really helped me educate my child, because I was not a teacher by profession. And after that, we did manage to get admission in a mainstream school, which was also open to inclusive education. And they had 2 teachers in the classroom, which was very helpful. And we felt that our child was not neglected there and really accepted. And there was remedial education also in that school. Now, that school was an ICSE school. Later on, we thought it would be difficult for the secondary, and we moved our child to an SSC curriculum school, which was a small school for kids with learning disabilities, basically. And my child was the only autistic there. And we were welcomed there very well. And because this classroom setup was very small, it was easier. And with one teacher, just 15 kids max, it was very helpful. And there was no pressure and it was a whole round development. And later on, we did manage to get him into a mainstream college also. So that was, and which was also very helpful to us. And they had all the concessions which the board had offered us. Technology by itself has played a very important role in this journey as such. We realized that a child was a visual learner, and hence in the very beginning stages, we used to bring him educational series and try to educate him, because speech was lacking in his case initially. And this technology was something which was really helpful to us, because even we, as a part of FFA, we had approached the board, and the concession of getting computers was one of the main important thing which helped my child. And he gave his board exams all using a computer. Even in the secondary school level, the school had provided him with a computer to appear for his because he was not, since he is not very comfortable talking to a writer, a computer helped him answer his questions. And he was very good with it, and which helped us. So that was our journey. And FFA being a part has been there for the last 20 years as such. Initially, we had libraries. There was only one library in Colaba, and which is close to me. So we had access to all the books in the early stages, and we could know about autism to that extent. And afterwards, as and when, nowadays as FFA, we have parent support groups as such, and on WhatsApp, where we guide parents as to how they can go about using the concessions which have been acquired from different boards and help their children educate themselves. I mean, educate their children using these concessions as such. So FFA has been a real big journey for us. And currently I'm a part of the core group also.
Right. And, as you're talking about your journey, the fact that your son went through regular schooling and college and all that, and then you heard Christina on the other end, who said it was so difficult, and we had to pull out and do homeschooling.
Correct.
And so how do you see things? I mean, have they changed for the better, or has it got more difficult?
there are mixed reactions as such. There is definitely a lot of awareness. Now with these WhatsApp groups, we do try and tell parents as to how they can address each issue as such whenever they come across, be it at school level, how they can go about getting their concessions and applying and telling I personally tell parents as to how they should go about getting these concessions from the board, And once the diagnosis is done by the government hospital and the concessions are given, we have to approach the board and it becomes easier for the kids to appear. Yes, there are kids who cannot do mainstream. So there, an open school is very important. And there also the parents are now getting together and you learn from each other. So this parent support is very important, and which is what FFA provides to us. And we regularly have these webinars where we have highlighted the concessions which are given across all boards as such, and how parents can see whether our child fits into which board and which would be more appropriate board for our child to appear for their exams as such.
Right. So any new parent who's starting their journey, and it's very confusing when you start your journey, you always have FFA to fall back on and to get that guidance. And you feel that's really important. Do you think there's definitely been a parents' movement which has happened? Do you see the same happening on the professional field, where you see a lot of professionals also getting involved in this entire journey of autism?
Yes, there are a lot of professionals who are really interested in this journey, and they do want to help us out, And we have been approached by many of them that they are starting something new and they would like to be a part of FFA also as such.
Right. So you feel that FFA is that one particular center where parents can come, professionals can come, and we can all find out solutions. Which brings us to the next step. We've spoken about awareness, in which you're correct. Awareness is being spread today on World Autism Awareness Day. We are having this webinar. We're all dressed in blue, which is the official color of autism. So we're all there. We're in support, and we're trying to raise awareness of that. How do you think is the acceptance? Do you think that the acceptance has grown, where people are now more comfortable? Because autism is not Down syndrome, autism is not mental retardation. It's none of those. It's just some creature that everybody's trying to figure out. But yes, how would you say has the acceptance been?
Yes, there has been a lot of acceptance nowadays. See, earlier, people were just aware of autism, but today now we can see that people don't mind taking an autistic children in the school also. So now there is acceptance at school, college, and even in the work environment. Now, FFA has been instrumental in getting our kids trained also, along with Vishesh. Now we had some graduates. Nowadays there are kids who are doing very well. We have graduates, we have undergraduates, and people are doing very well in the IT field. So basically, along with Vishesh, FFA has trained certain graduates, and now they have been secured internships with MNCs too. So there, at the work environment also, there is an acceptance now. I mean, people are willing to give a chance to our individuals. That's what we are looking for also. And we currently, the graduates of God, we want even the undergraduates to benefit from such a venture in future. Right. And we do have entrepreneurs also. We try and, FFA tries to encourage all kinds of entrepreneurs, be it runners, we have swimmers, and people are excelling in different, and parents are not just putting pressure on education also, even extracurricular activities. There are certain kids who have done very well and they've got Guinness records as far as skating and swimming are concerned. So there are kids who are excelling in all fields as such. And we do conduct cultural programs where these children can show their talent as such.
So you're saying it's really about understanding what is that special ability that the child has, and honing that, and you feel that people are getting more acceptance, and there is more inclusion also, which is happening, and all this should begin right from the time that they enter the school system. Start from that stage and move on to the others, and the onus lies on everybody. I mean, parents, professionals, people who are working, society at large. So you feel that's really coming up, and that people on the autism spectrum now have more chances.
Yes, Definitely, people have a lot of chances and a lot of opportunities are there. It is just, we need somebody to help us get that opportunity and show the talent which our individuals have. Definitely, our adults are doing very well.
Correct. So it's all about just getting the right opportunity and
Right.
showcasing them.
Yes, true.
Wow, that is so fantastic. Thank you to all our panelists. Because can we just have all your cameras on, both the other panelists too, please? Great. I mean, it's been so informative to hear. It's been absolutely fantastic. We heard completely from a professional, from a medical professional point of view of what it really stands for, how it's a spectrum, how we need to all form a kind of a support system to enable these people, to a mother who clearly feels that, the child has a potential. How do you really tap that potential? To somebody who's been on that journey and now is helping others figuring all this out. So all in all, we all believe that with increased awareness, there will be more acceptance and there will be more inclusion. And that has to start at the first level of school, where people are made aware and people are made to understand that this is a different ability. This is how people can also be like this. And that's really what we're all about. Is there any last words that each one? So I would like to start from Dr. Sujata. Any last words that you would like to tell our audience?
I think the one thing that I would like to say is each child is an individual. Accept the child first. Accept the child, understand his strengths and his weaknesses.
So the first thing is about acceptance of who the person is for what they are.
Yes.
And that comes from a medical professional. It's not from a parent. So I hope our listeners are, getting the gravitas of it. It's not from an emotional standpoint of view. It's purely from a professional standpoint of view also, where they understand that acceptance is important. Christina, anything that you would like to tell the audience?
Yeah, two things. One is the fact that there's a saying from a movie called Trolls, and it says, denying our difference is denying the truth of who we are. So by saying that we're all created equally is untrue. By saying that we are different, that my child is different and your child is different, but by giving them the opportunities to excel in the way they can is the correct way of progressing forward towards inclusion, acceptance, awareness, understanding, love, respect, etc. And the second thing is the work needs to start not just at the family level, which is the most crucial thing that the child needs is the family, the extended family, the neighbors, etc. But also a lot of emphasis has to be put on pre-primary schools, because that is where most of these things can be picked up. So those teachers need to be really well prepared for handling all sorts of, so it's not like pre-primary school teaching is just a short course. No, they are literally the gateway. If they identify clearly, a child has an excellent future ahead, because they are able to then tell the parent that this is what you observed. Maybe he needs help. I think it starts there. And
right.
Yeah, sorry, thanks.
Right. So what you're saying is about accept the fact that we're all different. So don't go about labeling. Labeling, I think, is what we generally enjoy in life. We like to label so that it helps us understand things better. It serves no purpose for anybody else. So accept the differences and create a kind of network. Start teaching, start training teachers right from the beginning, because I think that the word that you use is so beautiful. They're actually the gateways. So if you don't start from the beginning, then you start any job done well in the beginning is half its job done. So that's really important. Thank you, Christina. And Vahbiz, anything that you'd like to say?
I would say now that autism awareness is there, it's inclusion and acceptance of the ASD individual to give them an opportunity to show their potential as such. They are young and they have a lot of talent and potential. We want societies to have faith in these achievers and help them lead life as contributors to the society as large by giving them a helping hand. That's my take.
Correct. So that I think that's beautiful. I mean, that's really beautiful, is that they too want to contribute. Nobody really wants to sit and, wait for any kind of support, and they really want to contribute and see how they can contribute. So as a society, of course, as FFA, as parents, as professionals, we all have to come together to offer them that, because literally every child is unique and every child can deliver. I'll just please be online. I'm just checking the questions, and then one of y'all can answer it. Right. So there's a question on, is this hereditary? So Dr. Sujata, I'll leave that question to you. Do you think it's hereditary?
One of the reasons may be genetic. So there are like a family which already has a child with autism. The second sibling is at a potential risk of developing autism. So yes, it is genetic.
So it could be genetic too. We're still trying to figure out what could be the real cause of autism. But if the person is asking in terms of hereditary, it could be. There is a possibility. There is another question about what is the general age where you can say, I think my child could have autism. Now we've had different ages. Vahbiz said she knew about it at 15 months, where Christina said it was about 3 years. So there again, there's a gap. But what do you guys think is a general age where you kind of say, yes, this could be autism?
So the general age for diagnosis is around 2 to 3 years, where they give you a confirmed diagnosis. Potentially, if the child has to be on the spectrum, you may start seeing the signs even earlier. Like they might, a young child, an infant. So I work in early intervention. So we have the children who are 4-5 months who might not give you a social smile, who might not recognize the mother, who be averse to feeding, who may have issues with, tummy time. Some of them do not get the developmental milestone at the appropriate age. There might be slight delays. So we have noticed that there are few subtle signs which they start showing earlier, like exploratory play is not there. So then we know, okay, we have to keep a watch on their sensory system and identify as soon as possible so that we start giving them that appropriate stimulus.
Right. But you say that the average age is about 2 to 3 years is when you can take a definitive kind of a diagnosis on what it is. And it's only so that you figure out the path. Like Christina was saying, once you're clear of what it is, then you know how to solve it. So about 2 to 3 years. Great. Vahbiz, there's also a question, about awareness, acceptance and all that. So is it really happening? I mean, you really see it happening, right?
Yes, definitely.
It's happening across.
Yes, I definitely see awareness happening. And I do think people are accepting it also, because the way parents are really charged up into doing things for their child and, discussing things, I think definitely there is more awareness and acceptance now. And like FFA, from being a Mumbai-based association of parents, now we are spread pan-India. We have members pan-India, and like everyone is, people from other states are approaching us as to how they can start support groups in their states to help out parents. So that support is definitely there, and we're very happy to be a part of that.
So it's clearly definitely growing up. And Christina, the final question I think would
definitely
be about. Yeah. So Christina, the final question really is about, one talks about these situations and, your homeschooling and all that stuff. Do you think that a hybrid mix between homeschooling and schooling, is that something which would work out for children better?
I don't know about better, but I think it depends on each child. So there's no one size fits all. So I think it works very well for kids who crave social interaction, who need it. So that's an excellent place where they can go to the computer lab, they can do the sports at school and also do some co-learning at home. I mean, the lockdown has been difficult for most neurotypical children. So, it's a much more harder on the disadvantaged. So, at the moment, we need to think about that aspect. And yes, then in that case, yes, the hybrid mix is an excellent option. But in some cases, I think when the child is medically, it's more difficult medically to take the child, then obviously, yes, homeschooling has worked like a charm for us. And putting him back into a situation where he felt so incapable of learning has put a damper on things. Probably we could try a few years later, but in my perspective, it can work with some kids, which I have seen many of my friends do it, and it has worked very well for them. But each individual child has to be catered. I mean, his needs has to be catered to in his individual style as well. So, yeah.
So it really, again, is a conscious choice which every family makes depending on
For
the
their
situations
child,
which are
yes.
there and,
Yes,
what really
absolutely.
works. The final question is actually open to all of you. There's a question by a gentleman who's asking, is autism more detected in boys than in girls? And, do we not tend to look at girls more because the Indian culture is such that, a girl is usually submissive, not talking much. So we say it's okay if she doesn't talk much. And how do you really figure out? And what has been your experience in this segment where you've seen that autism affects more boys than girls? Anybody can pick it up. Anybody who wants to speak.
Yeah. So if you look at the statistics, the number of boys affected with autism is more than the number of girls. Okay. It is not like because the girls are submissive or such, but overall, if you look at a newborn also, a male has higher risk factor than a female. So I think that is just the genetic coding of a male and a female. It's not like the girls are not detected or we don't get it tested. I think it's genetically boys are more.
Okay, so because they are genetically more skewed towards that side, that's why it's more boys than girls, more than just about social conditioning. Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. I think we are done with all the questions. If you all have any further questions, please email it to the Notebook team and we'll take it up with the panelists. And thank you so much, Notebook, for giving us this opportunity and being such an amazing partner in furthering this cause, because autism awareness is the need of the hour. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Rashmi. Thank you, Ingrid, for arranging this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I thank all the esteemed panelists. I think a lot of valuable inputs from all of you. Really appreciate
Thank you, Achin.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, members of the esteemed audience, thank you for your time. Take care. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.